It's such a pleasure to have you on this webinar today. Such an interesting and exciting topic, how to create impact with your executive voice online. My name is Janine Chamberlain. I lead the talent solutions business for the UK at LinkedIn. And I am very, very excited about our panel today. So I'm going to start with some introductions. Then I'll share a couple of thoughts, and then we'll dive straight into questions for our panel, who really have all the expertise on this topic that we want to hear about today. So first of all, we have on the call Salima Sharif, who is the head of talent acquisition at Anglo American. Salima, would you like to say a very quick introduction about yourself?
Hello, everybody. Yes, it's Salima Sharif. I'm the head of talent acquisition at Anglo American. Anglo American, we are a global leading mining company, and we're the responsible miner of a number of products such as diamonds through our De Beers business, nickel, copper, coal, as well as what's known as platinum group metals. Even if you know nothing about the mining sector, just be rest assured the products that we create and actually dig up from the ground are the ingredients that enable the modern life, whether it's your iPhone, your tablets, your laptops, all the technology that we rely upon certainly today. We've got around about 90,000 people worldwide, and certainly the purpose of my role is to connect people, and I would say great people, to our great opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Salima. It's really exciting to hear, especially from a company like Anglo American, about your journey and in how you sort of create that executive voice online. So next up, we also have Mark Gunning, who is the head of digital communications at Leonardo. Mark, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yes, head of digital communications for the UK, part of Leonardo. Leonardo is an international technology and engineering company and a global player in defense, aerospace and security. Any of you that watched the 2012 Olympics with the Queen and James Bond jumping out of the helicopter, that was one of our helicopters. The work that I do in the UK, from a digital perspective, I look after all the UK digital channels and work with the talent acquisition teams to support their campaigns in finding and recruiting people that we need across the UK. So hopefully today will be an interesting conversation for all of us.
I have no doubt. That scene definitely made me respect the Queen even more, just jumping out of a helicopter like that. That's awesome. I can't wait to hear more about your journey, Mark. And then finally, we also have Maaike Berger, marketing director at Berger. Maaike, over to you.
Yes, hi, thank you for having me. I'm Maaike Berger. I'm marketing director of Experis. Experis is the second agency of IT professionals located worldwide, but I'm responsible for the Netherlands. That's what I am at home. At the office, at home, I'm mom of 3. And in my spare time, well, the spare time I have, I'm the board member of a foundation, Samen Varen. Organization for women with breast cancer and no financial support. So that's me, and today I hope to tell something about our journey. Yeah.
Amazing. So I bet you use your executive voice for more purpose than just one, which is yes. Awesome. So before we get started, just a couple of thoughts on why is it so important for leaders in the talent and recruitment space to develop that executive voice? And I think the first thing that comes to my mind is that you are the embodiment of your company's vision, values, and commitment. And if you have a sort of strong digital presence, it has a direct impact on how easily you can attract talent. People want to hear from people. So if you put your messages out under the header of your company, that's great. But if you put your messages out as an individual in an authentic way, then people are going to be much more interested and much more engaged with the things that you are sort of saying online. And nearly 70% of executives actually believes in this as well. But that doesn't mean that all executives get this right or that they all do this. And we'll hear a little bit about that today as well. If you're in a position where you're trying to convince other people to have a stronger voice online, how do you do that and how do you really get them engaged? So I'm really excited just to get started and hear from our experts on this topic. And I want to start with a question that I'm going to ask all of you. And I'm going to go in the order of Maaike, Salima, and Mark. And it's just about, what value do you see in being a social leader within the TA and recruitment space, both for you as an individual, but also for your company as a whole? So Maaike, would you mind sharing your ideas?
Yeah, I think it's very important to be present, to be found by the right people and finding the right people. And the next gen is all about a culture. So when you're not only share your content or your voice through your company, but also to the people in the company, the right people will find you, and your story will be easier and will be supported by the content you're bringing. For example, last summer, we shared several posts about COVID-19, the impact on our company and the impact on the support desks worldwide. Treat IT for working at home. And a few hours later, I was called by a Dutch news redaction to have an item on re-education to be an IT professional. We wouldn't be found if we didn't share personal and through our company.
Yeah, amazing. That's such a great example of the impact that you can have just by sharing the story online. That's awesome.
Yes, that's true.
Salima, what are your thoughts?
So let me start up from the organizational perspective. All organizations, we will have some sort of digital presence, whether we are managing it or whether we're not managing it. And there's many platforms out there where sometimes we can feel it's being done to us. And if we think about the EVP, for example, the EVP is that golden thread that links an organization to your candidates and to your employees. It's not just what the organization commits to, it's what it expects from you. And my approach, it's very much around in this space, how can we go about to almost find, win, inspire, and then ultimately retain great people? And getting your voice out there has to be a critical component of that. It's also an element around, there's a lot of nice material out there on all organizations. You have your flashy videos, you have your beautiful corporate, well-crafted words out there. Certainly from my experience as a TA leader, candidates want to understand. They want to understand how the organization, they want to understand from a feel, hear, and do perspective. You've got to engage the heart and the mind. And your employees and your leaders are the biggest brand ambassadors that you can quite possibly have. And I think there's an element around, you've talked about it earlier on, it's for authenticity, but also it's an element of relatability as well. Because you cannot possibly be everybody, everything to everyone. And being able to attract the right people at the right time, but also those individuals who may never work for you, but it's really great that they understand what you stand for in various different sectors of society, and what you do becomes important. So that's from an organization perspective. From an individual perspective, I'd say I'm certainly not an expert. I'm a keen amateur, I would say. And it can be daunting. It can be a little bit apprehensive. But one of the things I've learned is it helps your profile. It helps get your organizational message out there if it's crafted correctly. It's a great way of making connection with people who may not actually connect with you otherwise. I found a lot of people I've reconnected with. And I recently had an example of a new joiner in our organization who contacted me probably 9 months ago, 12 months ago, because he'd actually seen a post that I'd done and thought, this is quite interesting, let me connect. And through that connection, he found out about Anglo-American. And through that connection, he sort of, set up a job alert. And subsequently then, I'm not operational, my teams manage all of that for me. He dropped me an email to say, hey, I've actually started in the organization. If I hadn't connected with you, I would have never known that Anglo-American was such a big player in this space, but also that Anglo-American even had an office in London. So there's a really great way from an organization perspective, but also on an individual perspective.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's so nice to get that feedback as well from someone who actually did follow you. And I love what you said about we all have a digital presence, but you either manage it or you don't manage it. And I think that's really, really powerful, really important to remember. And more, this is just an expectation that you do manage it and that you put yourself out there, and obviously helps you to engage your own employees as well. Thank you for sharing that. Mark, what are your thoughts on the value specifically for TA? But I know your research goes a bit outside that though, so feel free to touch on other aspects as well.
No, thank you. Well, I mean, other than echoing the comments that have been made already, it's always the danger of going last. But working along the TA team that I do, the things that they tell me are that people are looking for work now. Not so much fiscal is not the first point they're looking for. They're looking for a business where they can achieve things, where they can make a difference, where they can be part of a family, where they can fit in. So if you can tell that story, if you can share that story, then that's a great thing about what the platforms offer. Myself personally, as a champion of someone who's trying to encourage company to do more social engagement, I have to be showing that it's not, it's not a hard thing to do. It's an easy thing to do. Following simple guidelines can have a real, and posting stuff out, content regularly can have real impact on what we're trying to, and the story we're trying to tell. We've been doing this now for probably 3 years in anger, and our follower growth has gone from 7,000 to 34,000. So, nearly 5 times as many. So it does have an impact. And I think having it where you are, and I think Salima said it, our people are our brand advocates. They have to show the culture. They have to live and breathe it. And having the senior people do that is extremely important, because that is where all the direction comes from. If people within the business, as well as people outside the business, can see this is the direction of change we're going through, with new ideas, well, not new ideas, but with ideas that we might not be known for, in terms of, we're a kind of traditional organization, but we're doing so much on gender diversity, on inclusivity, in terms of educating people on engineering, because there's a real lack of engineers in the UK. If we can have our people telling that story and showing the passion, then people that are going to come to this business or thinking about coming to our business can see that's a real culture that we'd like to engage with.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of having all different people share that story, whether it's someone who's been able to achieve something, maybe got into engineering, or a senior leader at your organization. I think that's definitely very inspiring for others to see and hear about. Thank you. So going last certainly didn't harm you, Mark. That was incredibly valuable. Thanks. So Salima, coming back to you as a keen amateur at your you described yourself. Can you tell us a little bit more about your own journey in kind of becoming a social leader within the TA space?
Absolutely. Definitely keen amateur, definitely keen to learn, making lots of mistakes along the way, and, getting on with it. So it was probably 2 years ago when I actually got appointed into the role today. And I did the usual thing where I went onto LinkedIn and changed my job title. And at that time, I had in the region of probably 300 connections or followers. And in a matter of a week, I had over 1,000. And I'd sit there going, well, that's interesting. Well, all I did was change my job title. And all of a sudden, these connections started. And that gave me the first glimpse into what social media and what digital can actually do. And in fact, it was probably about, I would say, a year ago when I recruited a fantastic lady into my team who became my sourcing and attraction specialist. And she came outside from the mining sector, and she came in and she said, look, you've got such a wonderful story, which you're very good at sharing externally, but we've got to be able to pivot that and maybe direct it much more to our future employees, i.e. your candidates, but also your prospective candidates. And I'm fair to say that she arm wrestled me into, come on, Salima, we think you've got a great story, you've got a great narrative, you've got great, well, maybe a great personality, not sure. It'd be great for you to be one of those people out there. And I'm a firm believer of, if I'm going to ask our senior leaders to step up, I've got to experience it myself. I've got to really understand it. It's no use going to senior leaders and saying, hey, we've got a great idea, we'd like you to do this, because they will have some of the same apprehensions and concerns that I had, especially in the space where actually that is new to you. So that's where actually we started. We started off, through that particular piece. And I think then the challenge was trying to find content that we thought was a really good intersection between representing the organization and the story of the organization that we've just spoken about earlier on, but also things that were really me, personal to me, that I felt I'd want to talk about. So we started off very much, I would say, using LinkedIn. Yes, I know I set up a Twitter, admittedly, haven't done much on it at the moment. Yes, there's an Instagram. Need to do more of it. That's certainly what my team tell me more, and they give me a good kick up the backside every so often to do more on those particular pieces. But it's very much around trying to find out those stories that are authentically me. I also think that if we think social media is just about transmitting out, i.e. the show and tell, then we're actually missing half of the equation. It also has to be engaging. So what are going to be those really great items that are going to be a conversational piece? And if you can find that intersection between you, the organization, and what you care about, that's what we're going for. And I think similar to what Mark said, I've written out and sent out videos and articles and posts, and some of the most unlikely things have been really well attended, if you want to call it that. And people have been very generous in what they've said. There'll be other things that you thought, well, I thought that would have a bigger update, and it hasn't been. So I think it's all about, for me, sparking powerful conversations along a continuum that isn't just Salima sends a post out on a Monday morning. It has to be part of a broader plan. And my advice certainly would be take one step at a time. Don't try and conquer it all. Do one step at a time, maybe one post at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we build on this idea of experiencing it yourself and then sort of introducing it to executives. Mark, I think you have quite a lot of experience in working with leadership to kind of get them on this social journey. I'm interested, where are they at, and sort of what are your learnings from that journey?
Okay. Well, we're quite at an early stage, I would say. And it's interesting to hear Salima's point of view that she needed to be brought into this kicking and dragging and screaming, but and I think it's a nervousness maybe about the unknown. Maybe it's not a platform that they use for. Maybe there's a nervousness about the word social. But I think again, Salima made a very good point. Social is not about a social life. It's not about relaxing. It's not about talking about things that don't matter. It's about engagement. It's about reaching out to people and telling your story. So I think that's really important. Why are they doing it now? Probably because there's an understanding of the value that social media platforms can offer. And that's hopefully something that we've done and helped them with to show them some of the results that we've done as a corporate voice. But again, as was mentioned earlier, the corporate voice can only go so far. It has to have that all sense of authority and a genuine peer-to-peer engagement, saying this is really what's happening. So I think that's important. I think also this year as well, again, I think it's been hinted at earlier, has maybe meant that some traditional paths have been closed off to people, and they want to make sure that they have every opportunity not to reach out, not to people that that want to know our story externally, but also give an opportunity to our people that we're not seeing every day anymore, that are not in the office anymore, they can't do team briefs anymore. So reaching out to them in another way and showing that they're still here, they're passionate about this is what we need to do, give them a sense of leadership through their social media channels. I think that's something that we're helping to do with that one. And finally, I suppose, a realization that this is how the next generation are communicating. They want to get their information through their phone. That's how they see it. That is natural to them. This, the millennials coming through, this isn't a new thing for them. This is how they accept their information. So an understanding that if we want to attract these people, then we have to talk through their channels. So I think those combinations of things, especially when we're trying new things as well, as I say, we're talking about wider issues. We're trying to be a more, well-being is important for us as a business, as well as, what the actual programs we're delivering, making sure our people feel part of an organization, feel at home and feel able to be themselves. That's all important. And if our leaders can do that and can try and and reflect that on their social media channels, I think this is a great opportunity for them. And I think they're starting again, especially this year, to understand what they can do.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing from you is there's a bit of education and sort of reinforcing by sharing the results that it has. But then I think you also said it sort of accelerated this year, maybe because of COVID-19, because we can't be face to face with people. Is that right? Has it really accelerated?
I think so. As you say, education at the beginning of this year, for example, I presented to both leadership teams about, what we've been doing on social media and the results we've been getting, but actually what now can be done with employee advocacy, with people talking to their peers directly and reinforcing the corporate voice. So that was absolutely a message I was pushing out there. And as I say, I think that has accelerated by the need to be able to speak to people more conveniently through the channels that are available. So when, as I say, we can't pull everyone together for a team brief. And people might be at home, and people at home are in different circumstances. Some might be living with family and might be having that support bubble around them, but others are losing that sense of team connection. So it's really important that our leaders do that, and by them doing that, hopefully showing those throughout the organization that they can adopt the same approach. We've recently started a customized working, we're calling program. So allowing people more flexibility to understand that if you want to go for a walk at 3 o'clock with the family, that's okay. It's not a structured 9 to 5 with an hour at 12 o'clock. And making people understand that they have that freedom to do that as long as they're meeting their customer requirements, and taking that change of culture from the very top is really important.
Yeah, the difference between remote working and flexible working, I think, which we'll start to see a lot more about in the near future. I have no doubt. And Maaike, I'm interested to hear from you. When you are getting started on this, how do you determine what sort of content and what topics you would put out there? How do you determine what feels authentic?
Yeah, what we do at Experis is the first weeks on the onboarding teams, we take them on a LinkedIn training, not the tool, but just personal branding, how to use it, what to do, what content is there through a company, and what would you like to be online? What will be your presence? Will you be an advisor, an inspirator, or do you want to claim authority? So make sure that you know what your message you will be sending within the corporate content that there is and the guidelines, but make your own story. And we help them with that with my department at marketing, and help them find the items that are there. And when you have to make a change, they have to do something different than that they did before. You have to make it easy and make it fun. And if to change, it's hard to make a change. So that's what we help, and we make them go to a cadence, fill it in their agendas, so they have a daily notice to do something and to think about it, and help them with that. That's very important, I think. To myself, I support what Mark says. Be personal. Have the guts to be personal sometimes. In this time especially. See what's there, have noticed the people. And I think the next generation is not only searching for a vacancy, if they are looking at your company, but also looking at the culture there, what people work there. They will search on a different way than we did when we were young. So I think it's very important to have the right content to them, but it has to be real. It has to be fit with what you want to say, and it. Yeah, I think that's the lessons I give them to the new people and to myself and to the leaders within my company. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying about sort of planning for it, putting it on the calendar, making sure that it is actually not just a sort of random, oh, I found something or I've got a thought, because then you kind of forget to post regularly and you sort of lose a little bit of the momentum that you might build. So
and engagements also. Yeah. When you make a planning and have to be there at several times, the engagement will be larger. Ask a question in your post, not only sending, but also asking something. There are recently polls that you can pull up are very interesting for that. What do they think? And get inspiration also there. It's not I think that's the new way of making your stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we are doing that on LinkedIn, but also on Instagram. And that will be there will be more pictures and more like how it seems, how it feels. And on LinkedIn, where the content will be more about topics or about blogs or start blogging. We encourage our people to blog themselves, and we will read them and help them how to post it. But make your own presence there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Maaike. And I'm going to ask Salima this next question first. I'm interested, Salima, in the challenges that you might have faced as you were building your digital presence.
Well, there were definitely a number of challenges. I think the biggest challenge that I faced was actually my own personal confidence. It's putting yourself out there in a way that I'd never done before. And even now, when I start thinking about something, writing something, you almost have to take a deep breath and be a bit brave and press the button. And always just thinking about, I think this information is interesting. I think others may find it also interesting. It's something that I value. So let's take the leap forward. So a lot of it definitely came down to the self-confidence. I think also, and I certainly felt this was, I'm not a great narrator. And my written English, even though English is my mother tongue, isn't beautiful. So you'd sit there going, well, is the grammar correct? Is the spelling correct? And all those little things would bubble out. After a while, we all have our own voice. We all have our own tone. And I've become much more comfortable around, something, the way in which I talk about some things may not be beautifully crafted, but actually it reflects me and it reflects what I want to be doing. I think the other piece that I've had actually a lot of help with has been around almost being apprehensive about how the technology works. If I press this, what happens? Or if I do a mistake, can I edit that? And I've been really lucky where, I'll be honest, I ask my children, my teenagers, and they sort of roll their eyes going, oh, Mummy, why don't you know that? So there's been some interesting family conversations when Mummy doesn't know this. But also I have a great person in the broader organization. I'll be honest with you, she upward mentors me. She actually says to me, look, Salima, that content that you did, actually, if you'd just done this, just done that, that would be great for that medium. Or, something, I think you've got an interesting view on this. So for a TA leader, you'll probably have resources available in your team, in your broader organization. And don't be apprehensive about tapping them on the shoulder and definitely learning from them. I think the final piece I would say is before I came into this, I thought, God, we're going to need lots of budget for it. And I've been genuinely actually quite surprised at how much you can do for free. So much can be done for free. And when I look at what we've done this year, a really small proportion of, we've actually had to pay for. So actually from a TA fraternity and a branding perspective, it's an absolute lever that is there for the taking. So understanding some of those tricks and those hints, I think is absolutely the right way of doing it. And I think the final challenge I'll talk about, which was a challenge at the start, but it's definitely got better, is definitely working and engaging with your internal comms team. Work with them. They are the experts. They are the ones with these beautiful videos and beautiful crafted narrative, etc. They also know what the guidelines are around maybe your social media policy as well. So work with them, collaborate with them. And I've always found whenever we've had an idea and a thought, we've sort of knocked on their door, metaphorically speaking, and they've always been incredibly helpful and in fact have helped us take some of our thinking and evolve it for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess, Mark, that must resonate with you. Work with the internal, not the internal, but the communications team. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences and actually think about sort of the challenges that you faced, but also how you might have supported other people in the organization?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we are the friendly face of communications, obviously, and people do come and knock on our door, and we're always welcome to see them.
Well, I feel like sometimes people are worried about that. Right? They're like, "Oh, my communications might not appreciate this, so I'm going to maybe not even go there." So I'm interested in hearing your point of view about that.
I think There is an element of that. I think in an organization of our size, and just a little bit of background, we used to be separate organizations that have come together as one company. So just due to the nature of our business, we were somewhat siloed. And some people do know who they know. And it is sometimes difficult. So it comes back to the education piece that we talked about earlier. There is an element of that. There's also, again, we mentioned it earlier, that people are a little bit nervous of the unknown. What can I do? What should I do? And again, it's encouraging people to come away from what they know. It is still extremely important to make sure we get the right media coverage in the daily press or the trade press, but you can expand upon that so much with adding, now this contract has been signed, let me tell you my story, let me tell you my role in it. That's really important, and we shouldn't be worried about that, because people are genuinely want to hear the story behind the story. And so working with the leaders, want to make sure we said, these are the things we can do. The obvious questions are, well, security. We're in aerospace, we're in defence, we work with governments. We've got to be careful about what we say. Well, we're not asking them to break any rules. Every company will have a media policy. Every company will have a code of conduct, and the social media stories just builds on that. Hopefully, you've got the thou shalt not, and you've got me and the comms team saying, well, that's absolutely right. But let me help you. Let me help you so you don't put yourself and others at risks. Come to us first, engage with us first, and we can show you how to do that in the right way. And I think we've even in some cases taken shared ownership of people's accounts for them. So we've said, okay, let us show you how to put a story on LinkedIn. So this press release has gone out. Let's do your piece. We'll write it for you, or you tell us the structure. We'll hopefully polish the communications around it and put it online and help put that out there. And I think once people get that and see that, you've got some great advocates then who can then share your story, because I think it's a fear of the unknown, and social does kind of seem to be, for some generations to be the Wild West. There are many people across the business who get it straight away, but some just need a little bit of confidence and to be made sure that they are directed and managed in the right way. And hopefully we can do that in communications. Simple guidelines, making sure that you don't say anything before us. Let us work with us so that we put the story out first. Then please do embellish it. We want you to tell the story, because that's what people really get interested in. And it's better for you telling it, if you're an engineer, tell it to a network of engineers that you're connected to, rather than me to say, did you know we did this? So I think encouraging that they can do it. There's nothing to be scared of, as long as they work collaboratively with hopefully a team that has a little bit more understanding of what we can do.
Yeah, and you mentioned code of conduct. Yeah, absolutely. But you mentioned code of conduct there, and I was just thinking, there's an interesting kind of maybe tension between trying to encourage people to go online, but then having these kind of guidelines. How do you sort of not make the code of conduct become a barrier for people?
Yeah, I think that's something we're still working on, because we have policies that are quite rightly set by HR, by security, by IT. But I mean, I think it's a matter of meeting and speaking with people, saying, right, you've got some great foundations there to work on. Let's give you some guidelines to work to help manage that. If you go into a pub, you're not going to go to someone and start being abusive. Well, you wouldn't do that online. If someone is being abusive, you wouldn't draw to them or engage in argument with them. You would take a different path. So it's just imagine yourself as you're communicating to more people, but imagine yourself as a social interaction, because that's what we're doing online. We're doing a social interaction. How would you behave in normal? How do you want people to perceive you? How do you want people to engage with you? And if you follow that, follow those guidelines. And I don't think any of this is rocket science. I think if you can do this, and if you are comfortable with sharing certain amounts, then educate people about the privacy settings on their accounts, for example, so you can only be seen by certain connections rather than all of them. So all these different things that we can do to help them, and don't be scared to be honest and to be genuine. And if you put something on there that's not quite right, edit it, or you say, oh, I got that wrong. I think that honesty also comes across immensely well on social media.
Yeah, I was thinking that earlier as well when Salima was talking about, not being a poet or the language that you use might not sort of always be as perfect, but actually that is you, that is all of you. And I think that is so wonderful about putting that out there. Micah, the same question, challenges, and then also because you talked a lot about how you are training others. How would you deal with someone who's really quite resistant to this, but you think it's important for them to have their voice shared online? How do you overcome that challenge?
Yeah, that's difficult, and I think some are scared to doing the wrong thing. What we do is make buddies. So they do it with the two of them, and then also you don't have to have 3 or 4 stories in that week. You can share stories with your colleagues, and one of them who is really present online can help the other to overcome the difficulty to post. And what we always advise is to mention the company. So mention Experis or mention Peak IT. We can monitor what's going on online and help them if there are things that not in line with the code of conduct or with our guidelines, and what Mark said, edit them and help them to be better and to become better. And then you see in a few weeks that they have more confidence to do something themselves, knock on their door to help them and make it little by little a little bit better and make it more their own. It's just like learning to ride a bike. You have to try it. You have to try, and you have sometimes to fall to be better the next time.
Yeah, absolutely. It had to be a Dutch analogy to ride a bike.
Yeah,
I think that's great. That's a great example. And actually, once you've learned how to ride that bike, you don't unlearn it.
It's very easy.
Unlearn it. So yeah. I think that's really, really perfect. I have one more question that I'm going to ask all of you, and then want to ask the audience, please, if you have any questions, pop them in the Q&A box, and we will try and answer as many as we can in the time that we will have left. So my final question is just on sharing your top tips, your advice, your best practices. Other PA or recruitment leaders or other executives and professionals who really want to either get started or improve in this area of social leadership. What are your top tips? What would you recommend people? And I am going to start off with Salima.
Oh, great. My first tip would be to get started. You've just got to get started, quite frankly. In the TA space, and I always tell my organization, the TA fraternity, you need to be the brand ambassadors. The best way you can do that is look at your current social media avenues that you have. Make sure they are truly reflective of you and how the organization is also seen. So start off with that particular item. So getting started is the first thing. I've got better at what I call thought starters. Throughout the day and throughout the week, things come into my mind, and I normally have a little Post-it note and I'll scribble a bit of a reminder. And these could be things that have stirred me positively. These could be something that has really annoyed me. And you run through all of those, and it's a way of sort of almost cataloging so you don't forget all those little micro moments that have happened. And then what I then do, actually now a bit religiously, is at the end of the week is look at that Post-it notes and say, okay, now that I've had a bit of hindsight, which ones really do resonate with me? So you've always got a list of thought starters. And initially that was really quite difficult to do. Now, at the end of the day or end of the week, I can have up to 5, 10, 15 different items, and you're having to be quite selective of those. I think the other piece I would say is, I've said it a couple of times, but make writing a habit. If you're better on video, make doing a video a habit. And I would say just on the video particular piece, it's an area that I've only recently come into, where I'm doing more and more video pieces. And I'm always amazed by the response that you get. So keeping it, 60 to 90 seconds long. And yeah, I'm a bit naughty. Sometimes they go over, which I apologize always about. But I'm amazed by people want to hear your voice in your words rather than just reading it flat. And if we think about maybe the consumer experience, we're all more likely to potentially click on a short video than read something that you have to scroll down or do something on a mobile app particular piece. So those would be, I would say, some of the tips that I would do. So get started, make writing a habit, look into video, but that could be a little bit, tricky at the moment. And also start having these thought starters, little things that happen throughout the day or the week that you think, something, I have a thought and opinion. And if I think like that, maybe other people think like that. And I think the final piece I would say is there are some amazing people already out there. Watch what they are doing. How do they send out their message? And sometimes it's short and sharp. It's what, Mark and Micah have said. It's around maybe liking their post. It's looking at who are they following as well. And also putting that all together into finding something that works for you. Because I think for a lot of people, including myself as a TA leader, I sort of do this alongside my day job. And trying to find a way which you can combine your day job and this together is what makes it sustainable, and it becomes a habit that you end up doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Great tips. Micah, I'm going to go to you next.
Yeah, I support the tips Salima's given. A video is very the next thing to do if you're a little bit advanced, I think. For me, one of the advices is have the guts to be personal. The personal notes you make and make it your own, or sometimes put in a family thing. Last summer, one of my friends is photographer, and she took pictures in the doors from all the people who are working from home. Just to post something personal about your life and have a look inside. It's very nice to see and makes people engage with you. The other thing is look for tools that are in your company. Look like a Hootsuite or something, so you can plan forward. So you don't have to think about it every day. If you can make it a habit through your workday, make it a weekly thing and put it in for a week in advance. And the last that I can give is ask for help. Don't be scared to ask. There are people who are very glad to help you and are enjoying being on social. So look for inspiration with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I think that's great. I love the idea of the doors, especially right now, as we're all at home behind our own doors. So that's brilliant. And Mark, what about you? What are your top tips?
Education again. Make sure that people understand what the benefits are, understand what efficiencies can be made, the story that can be expanded, the frequency with which you can push it out, so you're getting that drumbeat out more. So there is value to this. Make it about them as well. So again, we've talked about making sure that you're just comfortable liking stuff, but make sure your profile's up to date. Make sure your latest job's there. Make sure your latest successes are there. Make sure that their digital profile is one that people want to engage with. Talk about what you're passionate about. So baby steps. Don't go too far too quickly. I always find it's good to work with someone or help an individual that you can see you can help straight away, who might be open to working with you. And once you've got one person, you've then got an advocate who can back you up and can be that nodding head in the back of the meeting room when you're trying to tell the story, and can say, well, this is what happened and this is what I did. So you've got your confidant there in you as well. And finally, I would say our leaders are leaders because they have drive, they're competitive. So once you have one person doing it, and once you have someone showing what a difference that they can make and their profiles being raised and the engagement they're getting, others will tend to want to try and join in and be part of that as well. So don't forget that. Yeah,
wonderful. I'd like to add just a couple of thoughts on the videos, and this is only because I recently found out I probably shouldn't really be advertising something on this, but there's an app called Teleprompter, and it's wonderful, and it's perfect for recording videos because you can see the script and it's right next to the camera, so it's like just beautifully made, very easy to use. So if you want to start using videos, I would highly recommend using technology, using tools that are out there, and this is just one that I've used that I thought was great. And also, if you're nervous about putting something online and sort of the longevity that it has online, LinkedIn just launched stories yesterday, which means that you can post something for 24 hours and then it disappears again. So if you want to have this kind of soft approach and you just want to dip your toes in, practice with a story. It will disappear after 24 hours and see what kind of engagement you get on that. So with that said, I'm going to move over to some of the questions that have come in. And so bear with me because this is a rather long question. And it's from Chris. Thank you, Chris. So Chris says, as another keen amateur, Salima's point about taking it a post at a time really resonates with me. What are the panel's thoughts on how best to ensure your posts get exposure beyond making the content engaging? In other words, what tools do you recommend on LinkedIn to give one's content the best chance of being seen, not just by existing connections, but beyond the immediate connections on LinkedIn? And I will open it up to all of you. Feel free to jump in.
Well, I think the obvious thing, Chris, is that LinkedIn does offer sponsored content. So if your content is engaging and you're happy with the content and you've done it you've presented it in a fun and engaging way, you know, maybe asking the question as someone mentioned earlier, rather than making a statement. I think there's ways of doing. Then you can use the sponsored content to support that further. Now, you know, that is a little bit tight. It's not hard at all, but it is time consuming. And using this correctly, you can really target people to that are not your followers already, but have the same kind of profiles as you. So you can do it by industry, you can do it by job title, you can do it by skills, you can by areas of study. So that's something that we tend to use. What I tend to find is particularly valuable to me is the member skills and job titles rather than job functions, because you can really get to the individuals that have the same kind of wants and desires and skills that you're looking to attract. So I think that's one of the tools that LinkedIn can provide straight away if you've got budget aside for it. And I think if you put budget against what you pay in traditional media, I think you'll find that it's quite a good value. And I'm not just doing this as a sales pitch, but I think it will do it. And I think that's an important tool to use for you.
Well, I would like to talk to you afterwards, Mark, about your sales pitch, because we can use salespeople like you. Thank you for that. Sorry, Salima, were you jumping in there? I cut you off.
I think it was Mike.
No, it was me. Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah. Also, in your content, make sure you mention people or companies, because then in their group of people, in their context, it will be showed. And that's an easy way, if you don't have budget, to make it larger than your own circle.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Anything else to add, Salima?
Look, the only thing I would add is I've been really quite surprised at, and if you do a post that is short and sharp, or an article, and then you compare that with sending out a video, which I know is a bit daunting, and you're right, there's a lot of different softwares out there that can make that whole piece a little bit easier to talk through and a bit more engaging. But I find content that I send out that's video-based, the views are astronomically higher than otherwise. So there's clearly something in the background when it comes to video that appeals to people more. And I just reiterate, what Mark talked about. Yes, there's the sponsored content particular piece that I think is great value for money. But also maybe something to think about, certainly trialing with small little doses of videos.
Yeah.
And with your videos, make sure there are subtitles below it, because much of our audiences are watching it on the telephones, but not with their sound on.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, really good point. Also, it makes it accessible for literally everybody, right? Even those who are hearing impaired. Really good point. So the next question comes from David. Once you have established what the purpose of the social media posting is, what measurements are you setting to know whether it was a successful posting, or does it not really matter? Is it a case of getting either you as an individual noticed and or the company brand noticed?
Well, I think it's within your expertise. So you have to look at what engagement you have had last year, and what are other companies doing. And it's also about do you have the KP on the engagement of the followers? How more followers you have, the engagement will be a little bit less.
Yeah.
So it depends on what you like to do.
I think that's a key point. That is something that I always look at first of all, is the engagement rate, because that really tells you how much you're hitting home. I think again, average engagement again, Janine, you might be able to tell us otherwise, is around 1.5%. So if you go in above that, you can tell what your engagement is, and you can tell what posts work well, what ones don't. And also when you're doing specific campaigns where you're trying to drive people through to your traffic, obviously the click-through rate is also an important one. And there are benchmarks which again LinkedIn can provide, but those two are really important, I think, because then you are actually seeing how people are interacting with your posts, and that's what you want. You don't want just people just to see it and ignore it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I sort of add to that, I sort of agree with what's being said, and I think it's understanding your baseline today, having a punt at what you may want it to be in the future. And we had long conversations internally around, well, what do we want to get to? And it's fair to say we spoke to lots of people, LinkedIn, a couple of other organizations, and we did a bit of a thumb suck around where we thought we wanted to get to. But then we found, as we started posting, other people started posting, it sort of wanes and comes ups and down. And very quickly you can start getting a bit more of a refined view of what is working, what is not working. So one of the things that I do as the amateur amongst all of us is probably once a month, I look at all the links, all the articles and videos that I've done on LinkedIn. And I just look at from my homepage, what was the engagement? What was the response? Who did I connect with? Were there new connections that came out of that, etc.? And that will also certainly gives me a feel for what is working, what is resonating with people at that precise moment in time, and also what is not resonating with people. So there's something that you can do yourself by looking at your homepage.
Yeah, absolutely. I love actually this idea of you being an amateur, first of all, Salima. I think you've probably progressed to a little bit beyond that, certainly your knowledge and your impact as well. But actually, so one of the things that I did as a geek amateur over the summer, I posted every day for 50 days. And that was really the start of COVID-19. I decided this was kind of a good moment to step in and become more engaged myself. Embarrassingly, after 12 years at LinkedIn, it was this year that got me really over that threshold. But what I did after the 50 days, I literally just went back through all of them and I measured literally the views and the engagements and all of the different things to just find out what had worked better than other things. And for example, I found that certain days actually work better than other days. So it is really important to kind of keep your eye. And I don't necessarily know that there's a blanket rule that everybody's posts will work better on Tuesday mornings. I think it very much depends on the type of content. So, it's important to keep an eye on your own posts and how they are being engaged with, and then you can kind of fine tune off the back of that. I want to take a moment to just thank our wonderful panel today. I thought that was incredibly insightful. I actually, not kidding, I have pages full of notes for myself to take away. So thank you so much for that. That was really, really helpful. Thank you to our audience for tuning in this morning.